Lego sets with disability representation, IKEA reaching gender balance globally, and more. Let's get started. John, will you please introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you so much, Bernadette. My name is John Samuel, and I am the author of Don't Ask the Blind Guy for Directions. And I'm also the CEO and co founder of Abler, which is a disability inclusion and accessibility organization. And my passion for this topic is the fact that I am blind. And, it took me several years to come to acceptance. But once I did, I've been wanting to break down barriers for others. So thank you so much, Bernadette, for having me on today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, I really enjoyed your book. I thought it was really funny. I think that you're like quite the adventurer. I'm like, wow, this dude's doing some really cool stuff. I loved it. But I have to say, John, I was really surprised by how stubbornly determined you were to not accept yourself. It took you a while.
It took me a long while, and I have the bruise and cuts to show for it. But I think it had a lot to do with almost this kind of not that my folks were like bad people. I think it was just this cultural aspect of being Indian American, growing up with a disability. I think that the cultural aspect of it, and I also think about just my own personal feelings of just not feeling embarrassed and ashamed because I hadn't been exposed to people with disabilities, and I thought of it as something bad, not something, that was an asset to who I was and part of who I was. And I think that was the struggle I did with.
And I think that's something that a lot of folks from marginalized backgrounds experience is like, well, I want to downplay who I am
Yeah.
because I don't see myself represented. And so therefore I must be, I'm going to be excluded, or the assumption that there's not going to be support or that there is going to be exclusion. And, but that assumption is based in a lot of reality.
Yeah, for sure. Because when I looked at, in the beginning of the book, I talked about how I wanted to be an executive like my dad, right? And when I looked at executives, they were primarily, to me, they were confident. They were, they felt like they belonged there. And for me, as somebody, who couldn't see that well, and which then led to me not doing well in other aspects of my life, like school and struggling in those type of things, I just didn't fit the image of what it meant to be a leader. And so if I could fake it till I made it, that's how I was going to go. And so that's why I put on a mask and tried to hide the fact that I couldn't see, and didn't want to open up to people about it.
Well, I think everyone should read your book because it's really, I mean, it's not just like, rah rah inspirational. It is at the
Yeah.
end of the day. And I love that about it. But I also just think it's a reminder of our privilege. I mean,
Yes.
the it's a reminder of my privilege, right? And I always need those privilege checks. So I think that's super helpful. And I think that at the end of the day, most of us are hiding something. And so
Yes.
it's a reminder to sort of reflect on that as well. What is it about ourselves that we might not be showing the world?
That's correct. Again, my secret may have been the fact that I was blind, but yeah, you're right. Everyone is dealing with something in their life. They're hiding some aspect of their life because they don't want to be othered. They don't want to be, again, excluded. But once we can embrace those things that make us unique and different. That really is, the fabric of what this culture is, and what makes us unique. So, we need to help other people to embrace that. And I hope that through my storytelling, people can take away that. And I didn't make always the wisest decisions, and I hope people can learn from those too.
Well, I think, in the beginning, it sounds like you took yourself very seriously and you've come to this point where you don't take yourself all that seriously at all,
No,
by the
you're
title of the book. And I think that that's a sign of humility, right? And that's a
yeah.
great quality in a leader.
Yeah, and it's so funny because yeah, you're right. I did take myself too serious. I was always, it's so funny. I was talking to my wife about, living in New York over the weekend, and when I was 26 years old and I wasn't, reaching those career milestones like my friends around me, I thought my career was over. But I was only 26 years old, 27 years old, right? Like I'm just literally in the beginning of my career, like there, you know, and I was still, literally like I don't, but for some reason I thought my career, I'm just I'm over. My life's over, you know.
Mm.
But I had a lot longer to go, and there's a lot more. And again, even now, I'm only I'm only scratching the surface of where I'm going. But I think I have a different attitude as I go forward.
Absolutely. Well, in your work with Abler, John, can you tell us something that is giving you hope?
Yeah, one of the things I'm most excited about today is we've launched a workforce development program uh, back in October, and we had 8 students go through a 16-week technical training program, and they completed that last month, and they're actually starting their paid internships today. So we have 8 new folks who are going to be joining this internship program to join the workforce. And for me, if we can have 8 new qualified individuals who are blind entering the workforce, that gives me hope, because they're going to be able to pay it forward. I hope they pay it forward and help other people in their journey, and that gives me hope that we can actually make change.
That's fantastic. That's great. I love it. I love it. I love it. More good news. Okay, so let's get into other good vibes from this week. So the first story comes from Lego, which has characters now with a range of disabilities in the Lego Friends sets, as well as on the Lego Friends TV series on YouTube. So they found Lego surveyed over 50,000 parents and kids, and the overwhelming response is that more diversity was needed, and 75% of kids felt like there weren't enough toys that looked like them. So the new characters include kids with Down syndrome, limb differences, anxiety, vitiligo, and a dog with a wheelchair. How about this? What kind of impact would this have made on you as a kid, John?
I mean, it goes back to what I was saying, right?
Mhm.
I didn't ever I didn't see anyone who represented what it meant to have a disability, and it took me 17 years to meet somebody with a disability. Even though I'm sure I passed so many people in my life, because the number of people with disabilities is like 26% of the population, but I had my own blinders on that wouldn't allow me to see this. And having a toy like this, having exposure to disability, humanizing what it meant to have a disability rather than just a parking spot would have made a huge difference to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. All right. Well, the next story comes from the state of Minnesota, where the governor signed an order last week protecting access to gender affirming healthcare. So the backstory here is that transgender folks have been attacked by bills and laws all
Yeah.
across the US, including some new laws banning gender affirming care for youth. So now the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, signed an executive order, I should say, which establishes Minnesota as a safe state for transgender residents and refugees for those seeking gender affirming care. So in a segment of our community which is having a lot of bad news, this was really amazing for me to see
Yeah.
a governor kind of step up in this way.
That's amazing. There's an oasis, right, in in Minnesota that people can go to, which is because North Carolina has had its own challenges with with bills that were excluding people, and this is amazing to hear.
It really is. It really is. And I think I don't, generally talk about politics much on this show or in the newsletter, but I think that when there is so much hate towards the trans community in general, I have to find reasons to celebrate because it is tough out there, really tough for them right now.
Especially for youth, also,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And talk about representation mattering.
Yeah.
We're seeing more representation of those folks, and certainly within the influencer on social media communities. But then state is when the politicians in your state are like attacking your
Yeah.
individuality, it's just horrible. Okay, third story is from IKEA. The IKEA retail division reached gender balance globally for leadership roles. So, about half of the global leaders around IKEA are women, which is up significantly. And what I love about this story is how they did it. I mean, full buy in from the CEO, there was bias training, pay reviews, new hiring rules, which include gender balanced candidate slates, final candidate slates, and of course, performance metrics. So, all of this is really significant, and it's a good model for other organizations to adopt.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's the intentionality of the leadership to say, look, we need to make a change and we're going to do it, but we're not going to just do it for the sake of doing it. But we're measuring it in terms of our business case for it too. And they did it the right way, and it is a great model for others.
It is, and I think that especially having accountability and having these hiring targets
Yeah,
included as part of performance metrics, I think sort of emphasizes the commitment to this, right?
yeah,
It's not just something that's, a goal on a website, but they're really putting a lot of substance behind it.
yeah. It's awesome.
Okay, the fourth story is from QVC, that home shopping network, which has, and of course, I think this is the first story about QVC I've ever had on the show. So, so it has a new spokesperson who is Selma Blair, and Selma Blair has multiple sclerosis. So together with QVC, they're promoting a new robust line of accessible and adaptive products across categories. So in fashion, home, electronics, and beauty, all easily filtered on the QVC website and even co-branded with the new QVC show, Accessible Living. Wow, this is really intentional as well.
Yeah, for sure. And this one made me really like when I read it. I hadn't I didn't know about it, and it was like it made me so happy because QVC has come up a couple times in my own personal life because one of my very first team members that I brought on, she had retired after 40 years working for the state of North Carolina, but she didn't want to stop working because she enjoyed shopping so much. And her favorite place to shop was QVC because she was low vision. So she didn't have access to go drive to the store, right? So
Right.
ordering on these home shopping networks and like QVC, that became a major source of of her shopping because
Oh,
you
wow.
take off that transportation barrier. So if you think about it, you're bringing the shopping to someone's home, just like online shopping, right? But here
Sure.
it is. All you're doing is you're calling a number and you're giving it. So they're just calling the person, and then the person on the other end is answering the phone, taking their order. And so that was pretty. It kind of reminded me of Carla, who that was the very first person, like the number 2 employee on my team, which made me happy. But then talking about the products that they're selling, I launched a case a design competition for my cane a few years ago called Drip My Cane, and it was to really I wanted to make my cane, which is my assistive tool that I have to use every day, a piece of my fashion because it's just white and plain and it really is like it's boring looking, and so I'm excited to see because I've been advocating for 3 years, and actually over the weekend General Motors made a cane for me, which I'll be showing later, which I'm super excited about.
Wow, that
It's
is
super
really
cool.
exciting.
Yeah,
Maybe we should give a shout out to General Motors on a future show.
for sure. General
After,
Motors, they are trying to be inclusive, and I spoke there one time, and I talked about this Drip My Cane, and they came up with their own version for me, and it's super cool.
wow, I bet it's a tricked out cane. All right, can't wait to see it. Okay, and the fifth story is a political story as well, actually,
Hmm.
from the Biden administration. President Biden signed a executive order calling for each government agency to create equity teams and establish a diversity, equity, and inclusion steering committee to hold those teams accountable, defining equity as the consistent and systematic treatment of all individuals in a fair, just, and impartial manner, particularly those who have been often denied such treatment. This is pretty impressive.
It really is, right? I mean, when you read about this executive order coming from the top down, right? This is talking about setting this as a major precedent. But what really got me was that accountability committee, right? So it's not just making those policies, but then also having a committee that's separate that's really going to hold it accountable. So that gets me really excited.
Absolutely. I think accountability is key for a lot of these things. And I'm glad that that was part of the stories, some of the stories this week, because again, that's how we actually make progress. That's how we keep focused on our target, because we know that someone's going to call us out if we don't, right?
Exactly, right? Because I mean, we can all have the best of intentions, but unless you have that accountability, right, things don't really move that far. So good for them. And I'm excited to see how this develops and grows.
Absolutely. Well, it has been really fun having you on the show today, John. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you want folks to track you down, how can they find you?
Well, you can come visit us at abler360.com. That's ABLR360.com. You can follow me on LinkedIn. You can also check out my book at johngsamuel.com. That's JOHNGSAMUEL.com. And please, follow me on LinkedIn. Reach out. I love to connect. So thank you, Burnett, for this platform. And it was so great chatting with you.
It always is. Thanks, John. Everyone have a great week. And if you don't already subscribe to the 5 Things podcast or the 5 Things newsletter, you can subscribe at 5thingsdei.com. All right. Have a great week, everyone. Take care.